Hi guys! Our discussion for today would be quite timely, considering that the military is involved in securing the safety and security of the people. With this, we've added some issues that occurred during this enhanced community quarantine to further understand the role of the military in Philippine politics. Before we continue with where we ended, I'd just like to emphasize a few things from our previous discussion. Let's start with the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The AFP, as we know, represents the military. And under the AFP, it has some of its familiar and major branches. And these are the Navy, Army, Air Force, and the Marines. I've also mentioned before about their traditional roles, and two of their traditional roles included were defender of the state and counterinsurgency. They battled with invasion, rebellion or insurgency, and terrorism. On the other hand, two of the non-traditional roles were displayed by the AFP, which are the civil assistance and community relations, by donating a portion of their salary to the government fund to help aid in fighting the COVID-19. The amount of donation was based on their respective base and rank. This was then led by AFP Chief General Filimon Santos Jr., who donated 10,484 pesos. Also, the lowest ranking soldiers pledged to donate 100 pesos each accordingly. The estimated total was 16.9 million pesos. With this, on March 26, the Philippine government declared ceasefire with the communist rebels following the United Nations call for peace amid the pandemic. This was also for the purpose of focusing our security forces to help in battling the novel coronavirus. But on April 17, our soldiers had an encounter with the Abu Sayyaf group. 11 soldiers were killed and 14 others were wounded. 4 of those killed were Cordillerans. As a result, the government sent Lieutenant Colonel Ruben Ginolbay, a nominee for the Medal of Valor, the highest award given to any soldier who displayed bravery and courage despite being placed in a difficult situation. With his leadership, 3 bodies of ASG members that they killed were found, and the belongings of the soldiers killed during the encounter were retrieved.
We have here the list of the pay increase or salary increase of the PNP, but not all PNP members can get a high percentage of increase rate in their salary, but instead, only those ranks of PO1 and with equivalent ranks can get a 100% increase in their salaries. Next is the pay increase in the military. Only those with green arrows are the ranks who have their salaries increases. Next, we have here the qualifications for enlisting in the AFP candidate soldier. First, you must be at least 18 to 30 years of age. You must be a natural-born citizen. You must be single without a child. You must be at least 5 feet to 6 feet and 4 inches. You must pass the Armed Forces of the Philippines Service Aptitude Test, Physical and Medical Fitness Test. Next is the qualifications for enlisting the AFP. 1. Armed Forces of the Philippines Service Aptitude Test or the AFSAT with a raw score of 71 or higher. Second, you must have passed the Army qualifying exam and special written exam given by the Philippine Army. Third, you must pass the physical medical exam and physical fitness test conducted in the Philippine Army through PAOSC. And lastly, you must be physically, mentally, and psychologically fit for active military service. We have also here the qualifications for enlisting the AFP. First, you must be a holder of baccalaureate degree. You must be a natural-born Filipino. You must be 21 to 29 years of age upon admission, single and never been married, never born a child, with a height of less than 5 feet for both female and male, but not more than 6 feet and 4 inches, and of course with good moral character. And if you lack few inches to meet the height requirement, we have the COC, or a waiver or certificate of confirmation issued by the NCIP, or the National Commission for Indigenous People, or the CMF, or the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, if you are part of a member of the indigenous tribe. And when it comes to the PNP requirement, same lang siya sa military, but their difference is that you must be at least eligible with the following. First, the PNP entrance, or the NAPOLCOM. Second, the RA number 1080, or the BARD and board examination. Third, the PD number 907, or the CS eligibility to college honor graduates. Next here is, we have the perks and benefits of AFP and PNP. Number 1, subsistence allowance. It includes money for college. There will be a college assistance during your time in service in the military. There will also be allowance for housing, allowance for food. Number 2, Armed Forces and Police Mutual Benefits Association Incorporated. Number 3, hospitalization or medical care for injuries and sickness suffered in line of duty. It also includes life insurance. When an individual dies, there is a policy na bibigyan ng financial support yung pamilya ng namatayan. Yung namatayan na pamilya. And there will also be free health care. Military members or members of the military will receive medical and dental care at no cost. You will also have savings and assistance. During retirement, meron kasi members of the military will receive a monthly pension. And lastly, we have here the burial services. All funeral expenses will be paid by the military service from the body preparation to the place of disposition.
Now, let us talk about military trainings. And I'm going to discuss 3 of them unto you. First, we have the Reserve Officers Training Corps. Second, we have the Basic Citizens Military Training. And third, we have the Basic Military Training Course. Now, first of all, let's talk about ROTC. Now, ROTC is a civic education and defense preparedness that aims to provide military education and training towards the students in order to mobilize them in national defense preparedness. It is known under Republic Act 9163 or the National Service Training Act of 2001. So under this act, there are 3 branches, which is the NSTP, the CWTS, and the ROTC itself. So this act also requires that the Reserve Officers Training Corps must be accomplished in under 2 semesters. Well, as we know also that it provides opportunities to people or to you college students to have a glimpse of military life. For example, they are given the task of waking up 3 a.m. in order for them to start their trainings or do joggings or physical exercises, squat thrust, and of course they're also given military terminologies that we do not know like kasnga, tuntong kanan, lakad patakda, and tikas pahinga as well. It also highlights Article 2 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, through which I'm going to summarize its words that supports the ROTC itself. So here it goes. The government may call upon its people, and it is required under the conditions provided by law to render personal military and civil service. So in that case, we are given the opportunity to defend our country if we are given or we are called by our government itself. So the ROTC plays a role since college students are given lessons in military trainings, military strategies, or military tactics, which would be very essential if they are called upon the government since they are already considered reservists if they are already graduates. So yes, the objectives in here is that not only it calls upon the students to be part of the reservists of the armed forces of the Philippines, but it also engages the students to have or to develop patriotism towards our beloved country. So in 2017, our President Rodrigo Duterte has approved a proposal that it would revive the mandatory ROTC in both public and private schools. However, many students had been criticizing it as well as its critics, leading Senator Bato de la Rosa, Ronald Bato de la Rosa, to give a statement that why most of the Filipinos want the Philippines to go against China because of the Philippine Sea, but they do not want the revival of mandatory ROTC to happen. So that is what Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosas said or had claimed against the critics of the mandatory ROTC. Now, let's proceed in the basic citizens military training. So, the basic citizens military training is conducted by the Philippine Army through the Army's Reserve Command. So, its entry of training is undertaken by Filipino citizens who wants to enlist in the reserve forces. So, the government and non-government units assigns instructor to teach these recruits. So, the primary objectives is to teach them military strategy and military discipline. Let's go to the basic military training course. The basic military training course involves all three branches of the armed forces of the Philippines: the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. So this type of training is the most difficult among the three that I have mentioned since it requires you to do more physical exercises as well as there would be psychological warfares, more psychological warfares than all of the three since this type of training would automatically bring you to become a candidate soldier of any of these branches that you have applied if you have passed this training course. So if you see a video about a drill master shouting a recruit, that is one example that these recruits or citizens will be experiencing in this type of training. So you will also be forced to make something that is not applicable to you. Now we are through with military trainings. Now let us proceed to PNP and AFP institutions. Now first of all, let us talk about PMA. PMA, which stands for Philippine Military Academy, is a service academy that had been established on December 21, 1936. So, the PMA had been one of the major strongholds of the Americans during World War II against the Japanese. It also serves as a training ground for our locals who wants to fight or who joined the war against the Japanese. So as well, they had been training them about how to conduct guerrilla warfare or how to conduct an ambush against the Japanese soldiers. But however, the PMA is also teaching this from today. They're also teaching about guerrilla movements or tactics on how do they command each other or how do they help each other in terms of war. And of course, they also teach them calculations and math. So since, for example, they will be calculating mortars, the location where the mortar will fall. They will also calculate about the distance where they will shoot their missiles or snipers. So yes, yun, they are discussing that in 4th years, which one of my friend have told that, who is a first class cadet. Now, we could also say that in the PMA, there had been controversies. So there are different controversies, most especially hazing. So there we all know about the case of Dormitorio who had been hazed by Cadet Lumbag, Cadet Sanupao, because according to them, he did not follow orders like doing what they say or refusing about the things. And most especially, the main reason of Cadet Sanopao is that he is so sluggish daw. So he didn't even try to clean the boots of Cadet Sanupao. That was the problem that Cadet Sanupao had told. So he gave him the punishment. That's why. So he was also been punished by tasers as well as kickings to the face, kickings to the stomach, punches to the stomach, and whatsoever. What makes me suspicious is the releasing of the medical records. So that medical record which was released stated that Cadet Dormitorio, when he was alive, was diagnosed with UTI or urinary tract disease. So it made me suspicious, despite all of the beatings or despite of the kickings of the cadets. Why did the diagnosis ended up with UTI? So it's very suspicious. Now, let us not discuss this further. Now, let's move on. So, here in the PMA, they train recruits to become a good officer. Since they will be graduates, they will be having the opportunity to become an officer of one of the branches of the armed forces of the Philippines. Like, for example, if you are a graduate, you are automatically a lieutenant of the Philippine Army and Philippine Air Force. While of the Navy, you would become a petty officer. So, the famous officials who have entered here are Gregorio Honasan, Panfilo Lacson, and etc. Now, let's proceed to PNPA, which stands for Philippine National Police Academy. So, it is a Philippine public safety school of the BFP, PNP, and the BJMP. So, they are famous organizations related to safety. It was established on August 26, 1977. So, like the PMA, the PNPA gives opportunities to recruits to become an officer of the Philippine National Police. However, this doesn't mean that this skill is only for aspirants to become an officer, but this is also a school for aspirants who want to become a PNP or a member of the PNP or the SOF, the CIDG, and of course, etc. But this is also a very common institution. And its trainings are slightly similar to PMA since they are also being taught about tactics and strategies on how do they become an elite force. Now, we will be watching about the training of the PNPA cadets. So we will be seeing about their exercises and other stuff that their instructors are doing to them.
Balik! Balik! Hindi ganun ang pagtalon. Sula! Sir! Diyan, kaya tayo! Hello! Sir! Hello! Yan! Pagkalag! 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 Ay! Babalik sa bantak ko! Pakita mo kaya, ulo may bangka mo. Doon ka na rin. Kaya mo ba? Ha? Kaya mo? Hindi. Sabihin mo na kagad. Kaya mo? Ikaw ka pangan. Kaya mo? Ha? Kaya mo nga? Yes, sir. Kaya. Naka-video kayo. Gandaan nyo naman yung dive nyo. Live game! No! Ay, kasi ka! Sisi, sabog yung ulo! Ulit ka! Lakda mo yung katawan mo! Lakda mo! Balik ka! Ganon! Ganon! Sisi! Balik ka! Balik! Balik! Pabrikin mo yan! Pabrikin mo! Iba! Hoy! Ganon! Ganon! Hoy!
Now let's go to the Philippine Navy Officer Candidate School. So similar to the PMA and the PNPA, this school offers recruits to become an officer of the Philippine Navy if once they are graduates. So yes, as long as they survive the harsh treatment that they will receive, such as the drill sergeants shouting at them when at training, or either sleepless nights, or either more physical exercises, then they would be valid to be graduates if they survive this thing. So now let's go to the Philippine Air Force Officer Candidate School. So similar, it's also similar to the Navy ones, the Navy institution, since it also provides you to become officer of the Philippine Air Force if you graduated and survived its harsh trainings. So here, they will teach you how to become a good leader, like leading your team into the battlefield, and leading your team to rescue your fellow member if things are bad. And of course, they will be teaching you different airplane mechanics or piloting, since this is very essential when you are a member of the Philippine Air Force. So the Philippine Air Force Basic Military School is where an Air Force recruits wants to enter. So they will be training them to become one of the soldier or one of a soldier here in the Philippine Air Force. So yes, they will become pilots. They are going to operate the planes, and of course, they will be taught by their instructors about doing risky things like entering the battlefields or helping a comrade who was injured, conducting an ambush, or conducting an ambush. I've included this because they also operate in those operations. They also operate in land operations, but not quite because they operate mostly on air. So here, this Philippine Air Force Basic School is one of the least school where many recruits enter, because most recruits enter in the Army School or the Basic Citizens Military School whatsoever. So yon, they have similar income. They are similar in common, and yes, this is the end of my discussions here in AFP and PNP institutions. Now let us watch their trainings on how do they survive and how do they take the risk, the difficulties in their midst of their trainings.
It was a night of expecting the unexpected. Deep into the darkness, trainees in their white shirts peered out. They dreamt of standing here, but mere dreamers are never welcome inside this camp. If you have to crawl to achieve your goal, then crawl you must. If honor meant eating mud, then swallow all your pride and learn to obey. This is a place where old habits are washed. And individuals who manage to surpass trials and trainings are molded to become the armed forces of the Philippines' future leaders. The sun has awoken. It's a brand new day of surviving. Here at Camp O'Donnell in Capas, Tarlac. Baccalaureate degree holders are trained to be the armed forces of the Philippines' future officers. If in the regular military school, a cadet is required to finish 4 years of military education and training, at the OCS, your college diploma plus 1 year schooling and training could just be a ticket to AFP.
Here in OCS, we have meron kaming mga focused areas. We have the leadership development, the military skills and knowledge development. So with that leadership development, it is the foundation for their character development. So this 1 year of training is only focused to military training to include their leadership and the skills that they should acquire as second lieutenants and to become competent officers.
But if you think this is a crash course to military school, well, think again.
Bago ako nag-join ng OCS kasi ROTC Advanced graduate ako. That's why meron na akong motivation prior na talagang magsundalo. At the same time, yung father ko din kasi is in the military service. So immediately after graduating, nag-join ako kasi naisip ko yung mga klase ko na graduate na, actually I'm a graduate of MASCOM. Doon na sila sa mga regular playing fields ng MASCOM. So naghanap ako ng field kung saan pwede kong gamitin yung pinag-aralan ko ng 4 years na at least hindi masyado yung competition ko. So pumasok ako sa military na hoping na dito magagamit ko pa rin yung PR ko and MASCOM. Pero at the same time, nagsiserve ako bilang sundalo.
Bago kami makuha sa OCS, kailangan namin baccalaureate degree. So parang nagiging flexible kami kapag nandito kami sa OCS. Ina-apply namin yung dati naming kurso at saka yung ina-apply ng Army sa amin.
Trainee Officer Lopez recalled it was pure hard work from the first day of your entry until your last training.
Sa totoo lang po, nung una is medyo mahirap. Kasi I'm from former civilian, then biglang babaguhin yung civilian antics ko, transform to military actuations, yung pagiging proper, yung ibang way of life or routine, daily routines. Mahirap yung adaptation, pero nando naman yung challenge and goal na kapag ito natapos ko, sigurado bagong tao na ako.
There's never an easy day inside the camp. Even at mealtime, one must pour sweat before he or she could swallow a spoonful of rice.
Ayun, na-develop yung pagka-self-control. Kasi, di ba, maintindihan mo yung, ay, ganyan talaga yan, training nga eh. Ayun. So, in the end, hindi ka na magagalit. Parang, mag-enjoy ka na eh. Actually, ngayon, pag sinasabi lang, may kasalanan kayo, mag-exercise kayo, parang nakasmile na kami lahat, gano'n. So, na-accept na namin na gano'n talaga.
OCS began in 1937 during the formation of the School Reserve Commission.
If we talk about regular military school, OCS is a regular military school. So there's no difference between training institutions in the Philippine Army. But if you are talking about PMA and OCS, the difference is that PMA is a 4-year combination of a baccalaureate degree and a military training. While OCS, we are training individuals who are already graduates or already have their bachelor's degree, and OCS focused on military training only for 1 year for the officer candidate course and 6 months for the officer preparatory course. After OCS, currently the program is they will be having their Scout Ranger orientation course, and after that it would depend on the Philippine Army because the Philippine Army is the one who selected these individuals, and it's the Philippine Army that will assign them to their respective units.
The school lives by the motto, valor, integrity, and duty. At the OCS reception, persecution begins at day 1. This will be the beginning of a solid physical training, intensive learning, and excruciating mental stress. One will surely have to crawl his way throughout the whole training period to be worthily called probationary second lieutenant. Up next, witness the close-to-reality combat training.
Archer, this is Starship, over.
Physical, emotional, and psychological strength is tried, tested, and honed inside the OCS.
Go ahead, Archer. This is Archer. Over.
Each OC candidate is given a probationary rank as second lieutenant.
Continue. Conduct ambush at vicinity Lima 1 Papa Tango Tango.
Inside the school building, lectures are taught like ordinary classes. But on field, it's a totally different battle. All was well that ended well for the tactical training.
Sabi naisip ko, mahirap pala. Hindi pala basta-basta yung ginagawa ng sundalo. Kahit nasa training pa lang kami, pinaparanas na sa amin paano yung stability under pressure, yung paano kami mag-isip na hindi man lang naratel. Yung kahit alam mong magulong-magulo na yung paligid mo, pero stable pa rin yung pag-iisip mo at nakakapag-decide ka pa rin ng tama.
Since its establishment, more than 3,000 officers have graduated from the Officer Candidate School.
I would describe our journey in the OCS as difficult. Yes, we have been defeated in many instances. We have been at our lowest and have been pushed to our limits.
Sobrang hirap talaga ng training. Kaya lang kasi nung naging presidente ako ng klase namin at the same time, battalion commander, parang hindi mo maisip mag-quit kasi may mga taong umaasa sa'yo na pag ako nag-quit ako, sila din magki-quit na din. At the same time, very supportive yung family ko sa akin. Ayokong i-fail sila. Yung fear ko of failing those who believe in me, yung nag-sustain sa akin. Never ko naisip mag-quit.
Okay, good morning. Tapos na yung activity natin. So, we will be having our AAR.
Pumasok na ako dito, wala na akong mukhang iharap sa labas kung wala labas ako. Pero yung dahil pinarusahan ka tapos isipin mo na umuwi na lang ako, ganun. Hindi ko naisip yun.
Attached to the badge is a heavier responsibility for our nation. They were degree holders who had different goals and purpose. After reaching day 365 of OCS schooling, they are binded with a common goal to serve the country with honor, pride, and dignity.
Sa atin bilang maglilingkod sa bayan, gusto ko balang araw kapag naging general ako o kaya naging mataas ako sa Philippine Army is yung reforma na ngayon ini-instill sa amin is masustain ko kung ano yung mga changes sa institution, sa organization at kung paano namin pinaglilingkuran yung bayan. Gusto ko yun yung i-maintain namin. Nandyan yung values of valor, integrity, and duty na ituturo ko rin sa mga kapwa ko sundalo, kapwa ko opisyal. Yun lang, simple lang siya pero kapag ganun lahat ng tao, marami kang na-inspire, marami kang na-influence. Siguro makaka-influensya din siya dun sa kabuuan natin bilang organisasyon na Philippine Army, AFP, bilang isang Pilipinas na bansa. Yun lang.
For the newly graduates of 4-year courses, you too can serve our country. Take the challenge. Join the OCS.
Good afternoon. I'll be discussing the controversies and corruption that is surrounding our PNP and AFP. Our first topic would be Ensign Philip Pestano, which is murdered because he was about to reveal the corrupt deeds that's happening in his ship. But after years of fighting for justice, his case was dismissed because of lack of jurisdiction. You'll find out more in the video that is about to play.
Matapos ang mahigit 17 taon, ibinasura ng Sandigan Bayan ang reklamong murder laban sa 10 akusado sa pagpatay kay Navy Ensign Philip Andrew Pestano noong 1995. Ang dahilan, walang jurisdiksyon ng Sandigan Bayan sa kaso. Balitang hatid ni Ivan Mayrina.
September 27, 1995, natagpo ang patay at may tama sa sentido si Ensign Philip Andrew Pestano sa loob ng pinaglilingkurang Philippine Navy cargo ship na BRP Bacolod City. Paniwala ng mga kaanak, pinatay si Pestano dahil sa nalalaman niya sa iligal umanong pagkakarga ng troso sa kanilang barko. 10 opisyal ng Navy na pawang crew ng barkong nakasuhan, kabilang kapitan ng barko na sino Oil Lieutenant Commander Ricardo Ordonez. Pero hanggang ngayon, naninindigan silang nagpakamatay at hindi pinatay si Pestano. Matapos ang mahigit 17 taon, naglabas na ng resolusyon ang Sandigan Bayan 3rd Division. Ang reklamong murder laban sa 10 akusado, ibinasura. Pero di dahil sa kawalan ng ebidensya, kundi dahil sa kawalan ng jurisdiction sa kaso. Batay kasi sa Section 4 ng Presidential Decree 1606 na nagtatakda sa mandato ng Sandigan Bayan, ang sakop lamang na kaso nito sa mga military official ay yung mga may ranggong kapitan pataas. Ranggong hindi raw inabot ng mga akusado. Sa lahat kasi na akusado, pinakamataas sa ranggo na ang Lieutenant Commander, mas mababa ng 2 ranggo sa kapitan. Kasabay nito ang pagbawi na rin sa whole departure order sa mga akusado na ikinatuwang desisyon. 4 sa kanila ay retirado na, habang 6 na iba pa naka-floating status sa Philippine Navy.
Is the first step of our victory. Let the complainant file it in court, and we are not afraid.
Hindi naman isinasara ng Sandigan Bayan ang pinto para sa muling paghahain ng kaso sa ibang korte. Pero ang kampo ng mga Pestano, balak umapila muna sa Sandigan Bayan.
We are trying to tell the Sandigan Bayan na mali siguro yung desisyon ninyo. Because ang kanilang punto sa kanilang desisyon mainly doon lang sa ranggo ng mga inakusa. Hindi na nila, they did not take into account na the other aspect of jurisdiction is over the crime of murder.
Batay sa investigasyon ng Philippine Navy, PNP CIDG, NBI at ang kilalang forensic expert na si Dr. Raquel Fortun, suicide ang nangyari kay Pestano.
Even if you file this, and anong basis?
Ang problema nila, ang tinitingnan nila yung lang mga nabanggit na questionable na mga conclusion na naipakita namin doon sa paghihiling ng Blue Ribbon Committee sa Senado na hindi totoo yung mga conclusion na suicide. So we have evidence to show na pinatay talaga siya.
Ivan Mayrina, GMA News.
Our next topic would be the Pabaon scandal, wherein they give retiring high-ranking officials a money that is from their slush fund. You will learn more about it in detail by watching the video in the hyperlink.
Sa aming mga ulat ngayong gabi,
I want to immediately inform the Filipino people na hindi ko gawa ito. Approve ito ng Chief of Staff.
Ang sinasabing tagungyaman ng ilang general ng AFP.
Talagang hindi mo alam yung mga ginagawa ni Mrs. Ligot. She is the 7th owner of that house.
With your respect, I invoke my right for...
Kasi pag hindi ka kasi sumagot sa akin o sa amin, mapipilitan po kung patawag po yung misis ninyo.
At ang mga nakababahalang kaso ng stalking.
10 years old pa lang siya. So, pag nakita ko sa kanya, yung parang humanga ako doon sa bata. Pinoprotektahan ko lang siya.
Alas 7:45 ng umaga, isang balitang gumulat sa marami.
At 8:32 ang umagang ito, he was pronounced dead.
Nagpakamatay ang dating Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff, Angelo Reyes.
Please lang, pwede lang ho natin paanuin yung pamilya, pahingahin yung pamilya. Gusto lang ho nila magluksa na silang kasama lang nila at ayaw nila talaga ho na talagang umanap na sa media.
Bago mangyaring insidente, nasangkot si Reyes sa kontrobersya tungkol sa umano'y $1,000,000 pabaon sa mga nagre-retirong Chief of Staff. Marin itong itinanggi ni Reyes at ng iba pang dating AFP chiefs. Kasabay ng pagpanaw niya, ang mga katanungang tila hindi na mabibigyan ng kasagutan.
I want to immediately inform the Filipino people na hindi ko gawa ito. Approve ito ng Chief of Staff.
With your respect, I invoke my right for...
Bukod kay Reyes, 2 general pa ng AFP ang parehong sangkot ngayon sa malaking iskandalo. Ang mga dating AFP controller na sina retired Major General Carlos F. Garcia at retired Lieutenant General Jacinto Ligot. Bilang controller, sina Garcia at Ligot ang tumatayong financial manager ng Armed Forces. Kaya sila rin ang nagre-release ng lahat ng pondo sa mga AFP units. Ang posisyong ito ang tila naglagay din sa kanila sa gitna ng kontrobersya. Nagsimula ang kaso ni Garcia nang mahuli sa San Francisco Airport sa Amerika ang kanyang 2 anak noong December 2003 dahil sa hindi pagdedeklara ng daladalang $100,000 pambayad umano ng isang condo unit sa New York. Ayon sa sulat na ipinadala ni Garcia sa Fines, Penalties and Forfeiture Office ng US Customs, Galing daw ito sa savings, honoraria at dividends niya sa mga nakalipas na taon. Sa sworn statement naman na isinumite ng asawa ni Garcia na si Clarita noong April 2004, mas kagulat-gulat ang mga idineklara nito. Nakakatanggap daw si Garcia ng travel expenses at shopping money na umabot ng $20,000. Dito na nagsimulang matuklasan ang mga itinatagong yaman ni Garcia at maging ng kanyang pamilya. Kung susuriin ang Statement of Assets, Liabilities and Net Worth o SALN ni Garcia, mapapansing mula 1993 nang magsilbi siyang Assistant Chief of Staff ng AFP. May asset lamang siyang mahigit 700,000 piso. Umakyat ito at naging 1.4 million pesos noong 1999. At noong 2003, isang taon bago ang kanyang pagre-retiro, umakyat ang kanyang kabuang asset at umabot ng 2.83 million pesos. Pero higit na nakakabigla ang iba pang ari-arian at yaman na natuklasan ng Office of the Ombudsman na nakapangalan umano sa kanya at kanyang pamilya. Mayroong 11 bahay at lupang matatagpuan sa mga probinsya ng Guimaras, Iloilo, Batangas at Baguio ang pamilya Garcia. Ang halaga, mahigit 20 milyong piso. Sa record ng Registry of Deeds ng Tanawan, nakapangalan sa anak nitong si Timothy Carl ang 1.4 million peso house and lot sa isang eksklusibong resort at subdivision na ito. Si Juan Paulo may pag-aari rin sa Laurel, Batangas. Nagkakalaga ng 7.4 million pesos na nabili rin noong 2001. Dagdag pa sa report ni dating Ombudsman Simeon Marcelo, nabili din ng pamilya ang isang condo unit sa sikat na Trump Park Avenue condominium sa New York. Isa sa pinakamahal na tirahan sa Amerika noong 2004. Ang halaga nito, $765,000 o mahigit 43 million pesos. Bukod pa rito ang condo unit sa East 34th Street sa New York na nagkakahalaga ng $750,000 at isa pang bahay sa 625 Vancouver Drive, Westerville, Ohio sa Amerika.
Are you familiar with this property in Vancouver Drive, Westerville, Ohio, and then Trump Park Avenue condominium?
I would like to invoke my constitutional right against self-incrimination, Your Honor.
Dagdag pa sa report ng Ombudsman, 7 mamahaling sasakyan naman ang pagmamay-ari ng pamilya na aabot naman sa 4.4 million pesos. Ang nakadeklara sa kanyang 2003 SALN, halagang 870,000 lamang na motor vehicles. Mula 1999 hanggang 2004, sunod-sunod ang naging paglago ng kanilang cash deposits. Ang peso account na 5 milyong piso lamang noong 1999, umakyat sa 33 million pesos noong 2003 at lumobo pa sa 93 million pesos ng sumunod na taon. Ang dollar account naman niya na nasa $19,500 noong 1999, naging $1.9 million noong 2004. Ayon sa kanyang budget officer noon na si Colonel George Robusa, na nagsisilbi ngayong state witness sa laban sa kanya, pinaalalahanan pa raw niya si Garcia na mag-ingat sa kanyang mga transaksyon.
Sabi ko sa kanya, sir, delikado yan, ganito, ganyan. So sabi ko, kung halimbawa mag-deposit ka, gumamit ka ng dami. Ang dami niya, mga anak niya. So, hindi siya naniwala sa akin. So, paglabas ng kaso niya, lumabas yung mga accounts ng mga anak niya, ng asawa niya. Matunog na matunog ka ako yung sa anak mo. Delikado yan. Pag lumabas yan ka, sir, yari tayo. Hindi, sabi niya, pare ko tawag sa akin. Pare ko, hindi, okay na.
Pag pinagsama-sama ang lahat ng reklamo ng ill-gotten wealth laban kay Garcia, aabot daw sa 303 million pesos ang halagang di may paliwanag na yaman ng pamilya. Tila malayo raw may pundar ng isang general na sumusweldo lamang ng 37,000 pesos kada buwan. Kaya noong 2005, sinampahan ng kasong plunder o pandarambong si Garcia kasama ang kanyang pamilya. Tumangging magbigay ng pahayag ang kampo ni Garcia. Bukod kay Garcia, isa pang AFP controller ang sangkot sa kontrobersya. 2005 nang kasuhan din ng plunder si retired Lieutenant General Jacinto Ligot. Damay pati ang kanyang pamilya dahil umano sa mga hindi rin may paliwanag na yaman habang nagsisilbi sa AFP. Kung susuriin, halos pareho mga kasong kinasasangkutan ng dalawang general ayon na rin sa mga dokumento mula sa ombudsman. Kung sa Garcia sinasabing nagkamal ng 303 million pesos, si Ligot 207 million pesos naman daw ang pinaniniwalaang kinulimbat sa AFP. May 11 counts din ang kasong perjury na nakasampa laban kay Ligot dahil sa mga pag-aari at yamang hindi niya idineklara sa kanyang salin mula 1993 hanggang 2003. Nabulgar din na nakabili ang asawa ni Ligot na si Erlinda ng 2 bahay sa Amerika. Isa sa Buena Park, California na nagkakahalaga ng $183,000 at isa pang bahay sa Anaheim na nagkakahalaga naman ng $504,000.
Talagang hindi mo alam yung mga ginagawa ni Mrs. Ligot. She is the 7th owner of that house in the United States. I have documents to prove. Still, you are not aware of the activities that your wife has been doing.
With your respect, I invoke my right for...
Kasi pag hindi ka kasi sumagot sa akin o sa amin, papipilitan po kung patawag po yung misis ninyo. Kaya ayaw ko naman gawin yun. Kaya kayo na lang sumagot.
Natuklasan din na nakapagbiyahe ang asawa ni Ligot ng 42 beses sa iba't ibang bansa mula 1993 hanggang 2004. Ayon kay Rabusa, karamihan daw dito sagot ng AFP at may pabaon pa.
Was there an instance that you gave them pabaon? Sa dami po niya, hindi ko na matandaan eh.
Parehong pumasok rin sa plea bargaining agreement ang dalawang general. Ang kaibahan lang, si Ligot patuloy na dinidinig sa Sandigan Bayan ang agreement kung saan nakasaad na isusoli niya ang 21 milyong pisong kapalit ng pag-atras na mga kaso laban sa kanya at sa kanyang pamilya. Samantalang si Garcia, sinasabing naisakatuparan na ang plea bargaining agreement. Sa kainitan ng presidential elections noong nakarang taon, isinulong ang plea bargaining agreement sa pagitan ng state prosecutor at ni Garcia na pirmado ng ombudsman. Ayon sa kasunduan, ibabalik ni Garcia ang 135 million pesos o halos kalahati ng 300 million pesos. Ang kapalit, guilty plea sa kasong direct bribery at facilitating money laundering, mas mababa sa kasong plunder na may parusang habang buhay na pagkakabilanggo. Pinapawalang bisa rin ito ang mga kasong nakasampa sa asawa at mga anak nito. Dahil sa plea bargaining agreement, nakapagbiyansa si Garcia sa halagang 60,000 piso. Ayon na rin sa order of bail na inisyu ng Sandigan Bayan. Indikasyon daw ito na naging epektibo ng deal sa pagitan ng ombudsman at ni Garcia. Sa Senate hearing, marin pa rin pinanindigan ng ombudsman ang pagpasok nila sa nasabing kasunduan.
Mr. Chairman, please reconsider. It is not a matter of saying yes or no because many people, nanonood po ang ating publiko. Kung sasabihin ko pong i-withdraw ngayon, dapat po pag nag-withdraw ako, meron naman po akong justification.
Kamakailan, pinapospone muna ng ombudsman sa Sandigan Bayan ang desisyon kung aprobado o hindi ang kasunduan.
Panalangin ko lang.
Git naman ni Heidi Mendoza na siya tumatayong COA auditor sa kaso ni Garcia. Noon pa man daw tila may kamay na pilit pumipigil sa investigasyon kay Garcia.
Dahan-dahan lang, Hards, kasi tinawagan tayo ng palasyo.
Hindi mo tinanong kung saan sa palasyo? Sino yan?
Hindi ko po talaga matandaan kasi sa akin po, this is just an instruction coming from your leader and so I just obey, no? Hindi ko po matandaan kung saan, parang office po na executive secretary pero hindi po ako masyadong sigurado.
I don't recall having spoken with him. We categorically deny that such thing.
Ayon naman kay Attorney Theodore Te, isang criminal lawyer at professor, lugi raw ang taong bayan sa desisyon ng ombudsman na pumasok sa plea bargaining agreement.
Kailangan tingnan dito is ano yung nakuha ng gobyerno dito. Sinasabi nila nagnakaw ito ng 300 plus million. Ano yung binalik niya? Ang binalik niya less than half. Hindi niya pera yung binalik niya. Pera ng gobyerno yun. So ano nakuha ng gobyerno? Nakuha ng gobyerno less than half of what was stolen. Nasaktan ba si Garcia doon? Hindi siya nasaktan kasi hindi naman na pera yun eh.
Konsekwensya yon ng pag-plead mo ng sa krimen na bailable. Like for example, bribery. Diba? So if ikaw nag-plead ka to a crime of bribery, which is bailable, you apply for bail, ay malamang aprobahan ng husgado yan.
Giit naman ng AFP, hindi raw sila kinonsulta ng ombudsman na isa raw sa requirement para sa isang plea bargaining agreement.
Yung armed forces nyo mismo, nagtanong o lumapit kami sa Solicitor General. Tinanong namin, bakit hindi nyo kami in-involve dito? Kami po mismo yung offended and aggrieved party and kami talaga ang apektado dito.
Wala naman sinasabi doon sa complaint na galing sa military finances ito, no? Ngayon lamang lumalabas na parang merong nanggagaling sa military, yung mga pera, no?
Panibagong laban ang hinaharap ng sandatahang lakas sa mga ipinupukol na kaliwat ka ng isyu ng katiwalian laban sa ilang matataas na opisyal ng organisasyon. Malaking hamon ngayon sa pamahalaan kung paano sisiguruhing tanging katotohanan lamang ang mananaig. Ako si Jigo Manicad at itong nakatala sa aking Reporter's Notebook.
Our next topic would be the Jacinto Ligot tax evasion case, wherein in the year 2001, 2002, 2003, and 2004, they found a total tax deficiency amount of 428 million in her wife and his tax payment. We'll learn more about this in the video that would be played.
The Court of Tax Appeals acquits retired Lieutenant General Jacinto Ligot and his wife of 4 counts of tax deficiencies worth 428 million pesos. The CTA acquits the Ligots because an extensive paper trail of bank evidence was stricken off the record for violating bank secrecy laws. The Ligots are out on bail. Ligot was a former comptroller of the armed forces. He was involved in one of the biggest corruption scandals in Philippine military history, first exposed in 2004. He was accused of amassing unexplained wealth during his term as comptroller. The first to be exposed in 2004 was his successor, retired Major General Carlos Garcia, who also once faced plunder charges until he entered into a plea bargain deal with then Ombudsman Merceditas Gutierrez. After a series of Senate investigations in 2011, former military chief Angelo Reyes, who was also dragged into the issue, took his life in front of his mother's grave.
Our next topic is the Arroyo chopper controversy, wherein it was said that the owner of the chopper that was said to be brand new was his husband, Mike Arroyo. But then the prosecution failed to give evidences. That is why the case was dismissed. Topic would be the Sub 44 or the Fallen 44, wherein they executed the plan Exodus, wherein it was highly successful because Marwan was killed and they even cut a finger to prove his death. But when they were about to retreat, since not many knew about the operation, they were ambushed and no one could help them. Our last topic for today would be Duterte narco generals, wherein he named high-ranking officials that are protecting drug lords. That is why drugs cannot be executed here in the Philippines.
We have here the PMA Honor Code. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. A cadet must do what is right both legally and morally. You must have that honor and integrity of yourself to be a good example to your people and country, knowing what is right, including your responsibilities.
The Communist Party was divided into two, the Bagong Hukbong Bayan and the NDF, or the New People's Army and the National Democratic Front. The New People's Army are armed wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines, referred as the tax collecting agency of the CPP, and approximately have 500 arms militia. The National Democratic Front is the revolutionary United Front organization of the Filipino people fighting for the national freedom and for the democratic rights of the people Moro National Liberation Front, Moro and Lumad rebel group, established in 1969 after the Jibada massacre in 1968. Ideology: egalitarianism and federalism. Headquarters in Sulu. They have more or less 4,000 members. So, the Moro group was divided into two: the MNLF and the Abu Sayyaf. MILF is breakaway group of MNLF, seeks stronger autonomous region of Moro people from the central government. Established in 1977. Ideology: Moro self-determinism. Headquarters in Sultan Kudarat, Maguindanao, and they have almost 50,000 members. We have the Abu Sayyaf group, active since 1997, responsible for the most terror attack in Mindanao in the Philippines. And the most recent one is the Marawi siege that happened during 2015. Ideology: Islamism, Islamic fundamentalist. Headquarters in Holo, Sulu. The MILF was founded by Hashim Salamat, and the current leader is Morad Ibrahim. Militarization in the countryside. A particular process of change in the state and relationship between state and society. 5 characteristics of militarization: an increase in size, cost, and coercive capacity of the nation's armed forces, police, and security. A greater political role for the military, an increase in state reliance and organized force domestically and abroad to secure the policy goals rather than ideologically hegemony and bargaining. A change in culture and direction of beliefs that more. The effects of militarization. Displacement of people.
Now, we are going to talk about coup d'etat. So, what is coup d'etat? So, coup d'etat is the action of the removal or overthrowing the government and the state for a particular reason. So, this reason could differ. Either they do not want the government, or they like to gain power, or as well as people had been influencing them as well. So, however, this coup attempts has been made through the use of suppression, through the use of force, through the use of violence. But violence, I could say, is being used slightly. In case that if someone resists them, then of course they are going to kill that person, or either they are going to arrest them. So here in coup d'etat, it came from the French word coup d'etat itself, which means stroke of the state. The stroke of the state to keep out or to gain power, or to steal power, or to take over the power of the government who is ruling this state. So here, it becomes successful when the usurpers take control of government posts or take control of power for at least 7 days. So that was one of my resources that I have researched through a political encyclopedia. Yeah. So here, also that we can include that the success in coup attempts are very low, most especially here in the Philippines, especially during Cory Aquino's reign, or Cory Aquino's administration, where many of them have failed. The MITA takeover and etc., as well as the Gloria Macapagal administration, where one person or one particular person had been staging major coup d'etat. He is known as former Senator Antonio Trillanes, where he is known for his coup d'etat attempts such as the Oakwood Mutiny. And also, we could also include Kirubin, who is a Marine who also staged coup d'etat because he sees something that is biased under the administration. However, this will be discussed later on. So, yes, there's also one point why there is coup d'etat. This is politicalization, where military becomes aware of what are the politicians doing. So, I don't know, but yes, this is also the reason of Antonio Trillanes why he wanted to overthrow Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. It is all because of his programs that were unfinished, and it was all of his lies that she was saying. So that's according to Antonio Trillanes. Now we're going to the 6 distinguishing factors of coup d'etat. So number 1, efforts to illegally replace an existing government through violence or to the threat of it. So most coup d'etat attempts uses threat in order to gain the attention of politicians or the government who is governing the state. So they stage hostages, kidnaps, in order for them to gain the attention of the government, as well as sometimes they would also use violence if something wrong is happening. So here, they would use force, or they would use suppression, they would hurt somebody, or of course they would shoot to kill if they are ordered to do so. So this is where the use of suppression or the use of threat is being applied here in coup d'etat. But of course, the use of threat in coup d'etat is common, while the use of violence in coup d'etat is rare. Next, number 2 is violence employed is usually small. So that's just what I said on number 1. Violence is very small unless it is very necessary to do so. So number 3, participants already possess an institutional base odd power within the political system. So their participants here in the coup d'etat has power already. So they are known by people, as well as they have the power to stage it, or they have connections with the government, as we call it. So here, an example of this is of course Antonio Trillanes, Gregorio Honasan, Juan Ponce Enrile, Fidel Ramos. So those are the example of the participants that are known who have staged the coup d'etat. So number 4, it does not necessarily need the participation of the masses. Yes, it does not really need the participation of the masses like EDSA or whatsoever. So as long as a number of people such as a number of soldiers, it could be either 12 or 11, which had happened in the coup attempt in 2008 that was led by Antonio Trillanes in Manila Hotel, the Manila Hotel incident. So they were just 8, or I remember that they were just 8 or more who had staged the coup attempts. So it does not require a lot of people to be a participant in this coup attempt. So number 5 does not openly profess any political ideology or line. So of course, when you stage a coup d'etat, you would not let your ideology known. The ideology that you plan is kept unto you. So if you become successful, and you become successful with your coup attempt, as just what I said, that you would gain power, or you have successfully overthrown the government who's governing the state, then after some time, it would take some time before the participant would inhabit a political ideology, just like what happened in Grenada in Central America. Sorry, I'm using Grenada because it is the most common that happened, the coup d'etat. So here, number 6, it does not happen simultaneously. So the staging of coup d'etat is rare if people or soldiers, such like the word politicalization, do see if their government does not fit or is not good unto them or is a toxic, then of course the soldiers would do intervention first before conducting coup d'etat. But if it continues to go worse, such as what happened to Cherubin, then of course they would stage the so-called coup d'etat. Now let's go to see on Cory Aquino's time, where too many coup d'etat attempts had happened, especially that they were many takeovers they were mainly takeovers as well as staging, most especially for the Marcos loyalists. And also, during Gloria Macapagal Arroyo's time, it was also discussed by Mr. JOMAR HERRY Salvino. Now, before that, let's go to the 1986 coup attempt that happened during the Marcos's administration. Here, the leaders of this coup attempts are Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile and Lieutenant General Fidel V. Ramos. So why did they stage this coup d'etat? Yes, first of all, it is because they believe that Marcos has betrayed them despite he had treated them well. Second, it was all because of the people's advocacy or the shout of the people that they wanted to believe. And number three, they do not want Ferdinand Marcos anymore, since his way of ruling is becoming worse and worse as the years goes by. So here, it was backed by RAM and it was backed by Gregorio Honasan's team, and yes, Young Officers Union, since there are small youth activists that had been joining rallies or had been joining any kind of activities that are against President Ferdinand Marcos at that time. Here also, this coup d'etat had failed because it was discovered a month ago before the execution. So here, why was it discovered? It was discovered by one of former President Ferdinand Marcos's loyalist, who is General Fabian Ver. So during that time, General Fabian Ver had been reporting about his suspicions towards President Marcos. He had also seen that he also said that these two, Defense Minister Enrile and General Fidel V. Ramos, had been recruiting or getting some participants to join them, most especially their soldiers that are loyal unto them or their commands. Here is when the coup d'etat attempt happened during the People Power Revolution. So here it happened, the People Power Revolution happened, and Fidel V. Ramos and former Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile has been blacklisted by Marcos's soldiers or by Ferdinand Marcos himself. So what they do, they sought help from Cardinal Sin in order to protect them from arrest. So there, they brought them into one station and they protected them from the arrest or from being captured by the soldiers of Ferdinand Marcos. Here, all of the rebels against the former President Marcos supported the Cory Aquino and had also been protecting the EDSA or the people who had been doing people powers, as well as they joined the People Power Revolution as well. But before I explain the coup attempts that happened during the Aquino administration, let us first see the things or the video that had indicated all of its coup d'etat attempts. After that, I'm going to give a brief description about what has happened during that time. So let's get it to go.
Sa kaparehong araw ngayon noong taong 1989 ay idineklara ni dating Pangulong Cory Aquino ang State of National Emergency. Kunin natin ang detalye kung bakit ito idineklara mula kay Xiao Chua sa Showtime. Ako ay Pilipino.
Pagkasaysayang araw po, it's Showtime! 23 years ago today, December 6, 1989, nang ideklara ni Pangulong Cory Aquino ang Proclamation 503 na naglalagay sa buong Pilipinas sa State of National Emergency. Binibigyan siya nito ng mas malawak na kapangyarihan upang pigilan ang ikapitong tangkang kudeta laban sa kanyang pamahalaan ng mga sundalo na nagsimula noong November 29. Sinakop ang sentro ng negosyo sa Makati at ang Mactan Air Base at sinalakay ang siyam na instalasyong militar. Kinasangkutan ito ng 3,000 rebelde sa ilalim ng 44 na mga opisyal, 21 koronel at 7 general. Nagapi ito noong December 9, 1989. Ito ang pinakamadugong pagtatangka. 99 ang patay, 570 ang sugatan na karamihan ay mga sibilyan. Ang kudeta ay na kudeta na ang kahulugan ay strike against the state o golpe de Estado. Isa sa mga nakahadlang sa lubos na pag-usad ng pamahalaan at demokrasya matapos ng people power ay ang mga kudeta na ito na sa akala natin ay 7 pagtatangka lamang. Ngunit ayon kay Fidel V. Ramos na kalihim noon ng tanggulang pambansa, siyam pala ang mga ito. Ang una ay ang July 6 to 7, 1986. 490 na sundalo at 15,000 na loyalista ni Marcos ang nasangkot sa pagloob sa Manila Hotel upang pabalikin si Pangulong Marcos. Ikalawa naman ang November 23 to 24, 1986, God Save the Queen plot. Walang dumanak na dugo ngunit muntik nang magkabarilan. Binalak ni kalihim Juan Ponce Enrile at ng Reform the Armed Forces Movement o RAM. Ikatlo, ang January 27 to 28, 1987 na paglusob sa GMA 7, madugo. Ikaapat, ang April 18 to 19, 1987, ang Black Saturday incident sa Fort Bonifacio na ikinamatay ng isang sundalo. Ikalima ay ang June 9 to 13, 1987 na pagsakop ng mga loyalista ni Marcos sa Manila International Airport. Naagapan ang pagdanak ng dugo. Ikaanim ay ang pinakaseryoso sa lahat ng pagtatangka, ang August 1987, kung saan sinalakay ang Camp Aguinaldo, Malacanang, PTV4 sa Bohol Avenue na ngayon ay ABS-CBN, Camelot Hotel, Broadcast City, Villamor Air Base, Camp Olivas, Pampanga, Recom 7 Headquarters, Cebu at Legazpi City Airport. Nagbunso dito ng pagkasunog ng General Headquarters ng Armed Forces sa Aguinaldo. Sa kudeta na ito, na-ambush at nabaril ang anak ng Pangulo na si Noynoy Aquino, habang ang sundalo naman na nasawi sa Bohol Avenue na si Sergeant Eduardo Esguera ay pinarangalan sa pamamagitan ng pagpapangalan ng kalyeng nabanggit sa kanya. Matapos ang ikapitong pagtatangka noong 1989, nagkaroon pa ng madugong pagsakop sa Cagayan ng gobernador nito noong March 4 to 5, 1990, kung saan isang general lang namatay at ang tangkang pagtatatag ng 4 na lalawigan ng Federal Republic of Mindanao noong Oktubre 1990. Noong kudeta ng Agosto 1987, may kolumnistang nagsulat na nagtago ang Pangulong Cory sa ilalim ng kama. Kahit na allegorical lamang ito, sineryoso ito ng Pangulo. Ipinakita na wala siyang pwedeng pagtaguan sa kanyang kama at idinimanda ang kolumnista. Ano na lamang daw ang sasabihan ng AFP sa kanilang kumandre? Ayon kay PSG Chief Volts Gasmin, hindi niya nakita si Tita Cory sa ilalim ng kama, kundi nag-aayos ng buhok habang nagkakaputukan sa paligid. Kailangan niya raw maging presentable sa media. Siya ang pinakapanatag sa lahat. Ang pagtatagumpay niya sa siyam na kudetang ito ang nagpapatunay ng mga papuri ni Fidel Ramos sa Pangulong Cory, ang babaeng sintibay ng bakal. Nang mamatay si Tita Cory, nagpasori ang ilang sumama sa mga kudeta tulad ni Rex Robles at Ariel Querubin na sinaluduhan ang Pangulo. Ang marahas na himagsikan ay ginagawa lamang kung kinakailangan, kung masama ang namiminuno. Kung walang mabuting hangarin tulad ng ipinakita ni Rizal kay Simon sa El Filibusterismo, hindi magtatagumpay ang himagsikan at makadadagdag lamang sa pagkalugmok ng ating bayan. Ako po si Xiao Chua para sa Telebisyon ng Bayan. And that was Xiao.
So one of the earliest coup attempt that occurred during the Aquino administration was the coup attempt that is called the God Save the Queen plot. So here, the Divide Commission had concluded that Defense Secretary Juan Ponce Enrile, together with his soldiers, especially that are concluded by the RAM team, the RAM team, and their original plan was supposedly on November 11, 1986. So they are about to stage their plan there originally. However, it was discovered by the government, and that information was leaked by the Philippine Daily Inquirer. So here, they rescheduled their attempt in November 22. However, during that days when they had executed it, it failed since the military has been noticed and they were put into red alert. And of course, during the same day, the rebel troops had been cornered and have been trapped by the military that are under the administration. Now we proceed to the GMA 7 incident. So this GMA 7 incident had happened in January 27 to 29, where 100 soldiers that was led by Colonel Oscar Conlan has seized the GMA network in Quezon City. So another of his team had moved to Sangley Point Airfield in Cavite, and during this operation, one soldier was killed and 35 were injured. So fortunately, soldiers have surrounded them and they were unable to fight back. So during that time, they surrendered and they gave up the attempt. So yes, this was a very good move by our former president Cory Aquino. So next we have the MIA takeover. So what is the MIA takeover? So it happened in Manila International Airport. So it happened in July 1987, where 4 soldiers have staged a coup but was arrested and they were court-martialed. So they were, at the end, they were dishonorably discharged by their commanding officer. And yeah, in addition, during the Manila International Airport incident, their plan was uncovered before it was staged. So yeah, they know it, the soldiers were noticed, and of course, it gave time for the officials to plan, and of course, it made it successful for the soldiers to let them surrender or to give the rebel soldiers the time to give up as well. So yeah. So here you will be watching another coup attempt, which is the 1989 coup attempt that was held on December. So you will be watching how it occurred and how the heroism had happened. So yes, let's watch it now. Okay, so that is all for my discussion for now for the coup attempts. Now I'll be passing my torch to JOMAR HERRY, for he will be discussing the coup attempts that had happened during the Ramos administration until the Arroyo administration.
At this juncture, let us look into some of the individuals during the 1986 coup d'etat attempt presented a while ago and discuss more about the following military incidents that transpired during the regime of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. As we have learned earlier, Fidel Ramos was part of the 1986 coup attempt, but who is Fidel Ramos? In this slide, we can see his journey in the military. Trained along with American soldiers at West Point, New York, and studied at the University of Illinois, the United States, he then entered the Philippine Military Academy, serving two tours, Vietnam and Korea. These two countries were experiencing war, North Korea against South Korea, Post-Viet Minh, who controlled the North against Emperor of Vietnam. And in 1972, after his tour in the two countries, Fidel Ramos was appointed by President Ferdinand Marcos, his second cousin, as the new Philippine Constabulary, or the acting military police chief at that time. And after his cousin's declaration of martial law, he was responsible for enforcing it, arresting thousands of political dissidents, o di kaya ay pinaparesto niya lahat ng mga hindi sumasang-ayon sa pamamalakad ng gobyerno. And in 1981, he became the Vice Chief Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And after his defection in 1986 from the Marcos administration, supporting Corazon Aquino, he was then appointed by the President Aquino as the AFP Chief of Staff, and then later on became the President of the Philippines after being the Secretary of the National Defense. And in the year 1992, he helped the country from its stagnant economy and bloomed it after the downfall of Marcos administration. And in 1995, President Ramos sent the Navy and the Air Forces to the Mischief Reef at the Scarborough Shoal. Why? Because the Chinese built anti-aircraft guns and anti-missiles, including there are the defensive systems and weapon systems in the area. Parang naghahanda sila ng giyera kung meron mang mangyaring giyera. But the Mischief Reef is included in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. How did this happen? Nung napansin ng Pilipinas na may Chinese flag sa Mischief Reef, ang sabi ng Beijing ay, it was merely a fisherman's shelter. Silungan daw yun, pero bakit may mga anti-aircraft missiles, mga ganun, anti-aircraft guns? Aside from his action towards the blatant move of the Chinese in the West Philippine Sea, he also left a legacy, the Philippines 2000 and the Visiting Forces Agreement. The Philippines 2000 aimed for bringing home 1 million overseas Filipino workers and offer them job preparing for the year 2000 that would accommodate them all. The vision of President Ramos was successful because of the economic reforms he made, such as partnering with large companies and privatizing power plants. On one hand, the VFA's aim was to allow the U.S. government to retain jurisdiction over U.S. military personnel accused of committing crimes in the Philippines. Meaning, kung sakaling nagkasala ang mga Amerikanong sundalo dito sa ating bansa, hindi natin sila pwedeng ikulong at i-detain. For example, yung nangyaring Subic rape case at yung kay Jennifer Laude, kung saan hindi nakulong yung mga Amerikanong sundalo nagkasala. Ang counterpart naman ng BFA para sa mga Pilipinong nasa Amerika ay exemption of entry and exit processing para lang sa mga militar ng Pilipinas at pag-acknowledge sa paggamit ng mga Pilipino ng driver's license. Also allowing the Philippine personnel to carry arms at U.S. military installations or camps. And then requiring U.S. to provide healthcare to Philippine military personnel and the exemption of the Philippine military personnel from taxes on vehicles, aircrafts, and vessels on ports, road tolls, navigation, and any charges involving U.S. military installations or camps. Next would be Juan Ponce Enrile. With this slide are his achievements, and including he became the Justice Secretary and Defense Minister during Marcos administration. He also participated in the defection from Marcos's administration. Born on Valentine's Day, February 14, he still lives as a prominent and previous politician. And just recently, netizens used social card templates from news sites and then edited pictures tagging him in surviving ancient history with memes saying that there is still hope to COVID-19 because Juan Ponce Enrile still lives until now. Our next person of interest would be Gringo Hunasan. In this slide, you will see his achievements, and earlier he was presented as the leader of the Reformed Armed Forces Movement, or RAM, who supported the 1986 coup attempt. And later on, he also led in unsuccessful attempts, coup d'etat attempts, against President Corazon Aquino. And in the year 2017, he was appointed by President Rodrigo Duterte as the Department of Information, Communications, and Technology Secretary. But he faces the issue whether he fits the requirements for his position. Because under Republic Act 10844, Section 11, it is stated that his position requires a person who has 7 years expertise and competence in information and communications technology, cybersecurity, data privacy, e-commerce, information security management, or human capital development. While his colleagues such as Senator Cynthia Villar said that he has experiences and about security forces, so he can go around with hacking. While Senator Vicente Soto said that the previous Senator Hunasan has years of expertise in the military intelligence, not just 7 years, but 10 years. And the DICT's role is to be the primary policy, planning, coordinating, implementing, and administrative entity of the executive branch of the government that will plan, develop, and promote the national ICT development. Aside from the defection of high-ranking officials like Juan Ponce Enrile and Fidel Ramos, we also had 3 military incidents during President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo's term, as presented in this slide. And as seen in the picture beside President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, we can see Hermogenes Esperon, retired AFP chief who was appointed cabinet by President Arroyo as the presidential advisor on peace process. And Mr. Hermogenes is currently the national security advisor of President Duterte. Going back to the topic, let us first discuss the Oakwood Mutiny. In the year 2003, a group of 321 armed soldiers called themselves Bagong Katipuneros, led by Army Captain Girardo Gambal and Lieutenant Antonio Trillanes IV from the Navy. They took over the Oakwood Premier Ayala Center to show the Filipino people the alleged corruption of President Arroyo, adding that the president was showing signs that she would declare martial law. They were also called as the Magdalo for the insignia they used, which was branded in their right arm. The insignia bore the flag of the Magdalo faction during the Philippine Revolution. Their grievances were broadcasted in the ABS-CBN channel, stating the removal of the president and her leaders, but it was unsuccessful, and the soldiers later on surrendered. Some soldiers admitted guilty in the court, and they were either honorably discharged, dishonorably discharged, pardoned, but others such as Marin Nicanor Faeldon and Antonio Trillanes did not agree with the plea bargain given by the government. And to further understand what happened, let us watch this video.
Walang mangyayari. The corruption will continue. The irregularities will continue. Yan ang pinili ng taong bayan, then so be it.
Pero para sabi ni General Simato na napapayag niya kayo sa anumang napag-usapan nyo.
Well, sinabi na lang yan to para ano eh. Pero I believe na wala namang ma-implement. Wala ma-improve. You watch out. You observe. Wala mangyayari.
So nangyari ba ngayon? May nanalo ba, sir?
Yes. It was a moral victory for us. Nasabi namin yung totoo.
Ano mangyayari sa court martial kayo?
I don't know. We'll be in prison or
So
what?
pag hindi nasunod yung gusto niyo, sir, anong pwede mangyari?
Wala eh. Wala na akong magagawa kasi ganyan yung ano eh. Yun ang gusto ng Pilipino eh. Gusto na yung Pilipino yung niloloko siya eh. Di ba? Gusto niya yung that he's being led by the nose. So, ganun lang yan.
Wala nga ibang mensahe sa pwede sabihin sa mga tao katulad mo na walaban din.
Just keep on fighting. Hold on to your ideals and
thank you.
Our next topic would be Marine Standoff. In this slide, we can see Colonel Ariel Oliva Querubin, a retired Philippine Marine Corps officer and a recipient for the highest military honor, which is the Medal of Valor. Also, he led the 5-hour standoff, barricading their barracks that started when their commander, Major General Renato Miranda, was relieved of his duties earlier after President Arroyo's imposition of state of emergency because of potential threats against the government. As a result, all the soldiers who were present were tried in the military court. Their junior officers were proven not guilty because of insufficient evidence, while Colonel Querubin, Major General Miranda, and Brigadier General Danilo Lim were tried in court but pleaded for exoneration. Our third military incident, which is the Manila Peninsula Siege. This event occurred at the Peninsula Manila Hotel in Makati, where Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, Brigadier General Danilo Lim, and 25 other Magdalo mutineers walked out of their trial and marched through the streets of Makati to call for the ousting of President Arroyo, and seized a function room in the Peninsula Hotel. Some soldiers and former Vice President Jofisto Gingona Jr. joined to march to the hotel. They were then arrested by the Philippine National Police, along with some reporters, but these reporters were released afterwards.
lahat ng taong naghahangat ng pagbabago, samahan nyo kami rito sa Makati. Ito na lang po ang huling pagkakataon. Alas 11 ho ng umaga, biglang nag-walkout yung mga Magdalo soldiers at dire-diretso dito sa Makati Avenue kasama yung mga kanilang mga escorts at may mga armadong naglabasan ng barel at naglabasan yung mga armed bands sa Magdalo.
Dito lang sa Pilipinas, ang mga sundalong nasa gitna ng pista sa kasong rebelyon nag-walkout para mag-rebellion ulit.
The President continues to violate the Constitution with impunity repeatedly. She continues to plunder the Treasury, to disrespect the rule of law.
But what exactly is this? This is what, a withdrawal support? This is
A withdrawal of support. We are joining our people in calling for the removal of this illegitimate president.
Are other units joining?
Yes, other units are joining. Military from Mindanao to Northern Luzon.
Dinaan sa gulatan, kahit ang abogado ni General Lim na iwan tuloy.
What's happening here? Wala, medyo napuno lang kami. Oh, tapos, ano nangyayari ngayon? What's happening here?
Kailangan natin ng mag-protest against yung kasubrahan ng gobyerno ngayon. Nagpasensya kami ng matagal pero hindi na kaya ito.
Submission to
Automation para magkaroon tayo ng changes sa bansang ito. Kasi wala naman nagbago eh. Mag-ipon tayo and then we voice out our sentiments. Kasi maraming mga taong hindi makapagsalita dahil pinipigil eh.
Yung mga units na may karga, ano yun?
Ay, hindi naman.
May tropa daw.
Ha? May tropa daw. Ano, ikaw sa na. Mga tropa kami, merong hindi tropa namin, pero sumasama yan sila sa atin.
Huwag kayo puputok, hindi tayo magkalaban. Hindi tayo magkalaban, sir. What happens now? I mean, you guys are being tried, tapos you can just walk out. That's highly unusual. So, it's not just any protest, I guess. How would you describe it then?
Personally, this is a form of protest. I have escaped before, and that is a form of not just defying the government, it's a form of showing to the people that I believe and continue to fight dun sa welfare nila eh.
At dito lang sa Pilipinas, ang rebelyon parating nauuwi sa 5-star hotel. Manila Hotel noong 86, Oakwood noong 2003, at ngayon sa Manila Pen. Sa pintuan pa lang, nagharangan na. Sa loob noon siya may ang tanghalian ng mga turista.
Thus, we make this fateful step of removing Mrs. Macapagal Arroyo from the presidency and undertake the formation of a new government. No other means remain but for the officers and men of the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police to exercise their constitutional mandate and to take the side of the sovereign people.
It is not a question of legal or not, it is a question of being morally. What is morally to be done now by our own president?
Pero parang gulat ang mga rebelde. Kung hindi popular ang Pangulo, bakit walang dumagsang people power? 6 na oras sila naghintay, walang dumating. Pero ang hindi kasi malinaw kung sino ang ipapalit kay GMA. Lahat na lang ng rebelde at supporter, kinulit namin tungkol dito.
Napagkaisahan namin na we request the President to step down along with the Vice President, and then we request the Senate President and the Speaker of the House to allow themselves to be bypassed so that we can clamor for a caretaker President in the person of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Lilitaw yung bagong liderato.
Sa huli tuloy mukhang ubakla sila nang wala pang napagkakasundo ang kapalit. Ito na marahil ang pinakamalaki nilang pagkakamali. Kung mahiwag ang pag-iisip ng mga rebelde, sa ibaba naman suryal ang mga pangyayari. Ibang hotel guests hindi magkandara pa sa pag-alis. Pero ang iba, nakuha pang magpa-picture taking. Alas 3 daw lulusubin na ang hotel. Pagsapit ng alas 3, wala nang laman ng lobby. Kaunti na lang kaming naiwan sa loob. Sa labas, nagkabatalo ng Marines at sa loob, wala pang 20 rebelde. Alas 4:30 ng hapon, sa kalahating oras matapos yung ultimatum na binigay ng PNP para umalis si General Lim at si Trillanes. Pero hindi pa rin sila maalis. Ngayon, nagde-deploy na ang mga tropa sa harapan. Naghahanda na sila.
Hindi kami aalis dito hanggat hindi matatapos itong laban namin. General!
Ding, para sa'yo. Sige, yun na yung tear gas. Umusok na, oh.
Pag alas 5, nagsimula sila mag-tirgas. Binasag din sa namin, minsan tirgas. Yung usok papunta na rito. Minsan-minsan napapaputok sila. Matras, dahil yung tirgas mapasok na dito. So lahat ngayon, media at yung mga sundalo, mapapunta na dito. Okay na kayo? Basta bato. Tago kasi sila ng bato, okay? Sige, tago lang kasi sila ng bato. Sa loob, pilit binabasag ng ilan ng mga bintana para makahinga. At ang ilan sa media nangangarag na.
Okay, we are marching out! Counter fire!
It's gone right through the front doors and has entered the foyer of the hotel as we speak. Excuse me, sir. I do see many soldiers now inside the foyer proper, behind the armoured personnel carrier.
Alas 6 ng gabi, matapos matirgas at paradahan ng tangke sa labi, suko na si Trillanes.
Na walang pakundangan ho itong administrasyon na to. For the sake of the safety of the civilians, we are coming out. If she's willing to kill all of you here, we're not letting that happen. Ay tumayo rito ngayong araw na to upang gampanan ang aking tungkulin. Whatever they would want to do with me.
Are you surrendering?
Like I said before, we're going out for the sake of the safety of everybody.
Sigawan tayo dito?
Since 10 ng gabi, apparently tapos na yung siege. Pinabababa na kami, pero may tirgas pa rin dito sa labi.
Isa-isang nilabas si Trillanes, Lim at mga Magdalo. Natandaan ko tuloy ang sinabi sa akin ni General Lim bago siya sumuko. Nanghihinaing daw siya at nalulungkot dahil gaya ng dati, maraming hindi marunong tumupad sa usapan. Ang dating pinagmamalaking labi ng Manila Pen, warak at sunog. Pero gaya ng maraming bagay sa bansa natin, tatakpan lang ito ulit ng pintura at palitada. At maraming nagkukunwari na walang nangyayari.
And the aftermath, aside from the honorable and dishonorable charges on the cases that were filed against these soldiers involved in the Oakwood and Manila Peninsula siege, they were granted also amnesty by President Aquino. And later on, some of them ran for public office like Antonio Trillanes and Gary Alejano, while Nicanor Faldon and Danilo Lim were appointed into their respective law enforcement offices.
Napili namin
July 27, 2003, unang nakilala si Lieutenant Senior Grade Antonio Trillanes IV. Isa siya sa mga lider ng mahigit 300 sundalo ng grupong Magdalo na sumugod sa Makati. Pangyayaring tumatak sa kasaysayan at tinawag na Oakwood Mutiny.
This is not a coup d'etat. We're not attempting to grab power. We're just trying to express our grievances against this government.
Sa isang tape message, ipinarating nila sa gobyerno ang kanilang mga hinaing, kabilang ang umano'y korupsyon sa militar. Ang mga demand nila noon, pagbibitiw ni Noy Pangulong Arroyo at iba pang pinuno sa ilalim ng administrasyon at pagpapatupad ng National Recovery Program na nila'y tunay na solusyon sa mga problema ng bayan. Nagdeklara si Arroyo ng state of rebellion at nagbigay ng palugit sa mga sundalo. Kinagabihan, pagkatapos ng negosasyon, sumuko ang mga rebeldeng sundalo.
The crisis in Makati is over.
I believe na itong reforms na to, this will not come within my lifetime. Hindi yan, yung mga, siyempre, they'll say what they promise these things. Ganun lang. Ako nga, I stated these demands just for the sake of stating demands. But, yan, in behalf of the group. Pero, we're not kidding anybody here. Wala mangyayari.
Ipinagharap ng kasong kudeta si Trillanes. Naharap din siya sa court-martial proceeding dahil sa paglabag sa Articles of War. Ikinulong siya sa Bonifacio Naval Station sa Fort Bonifacio. 4 na taon ang nakalipas, tumakbo at nanalo bilang senador si Trillanes kahit pa nakakulong. At sa gitna ng pagdinig ng kinakaharap na kasong kudeta, nag-walkout sa korte sina Senador Trillanes IV at mga kapwa niya akusadong magdalo.
Nananawagan kami sa taong bayan na naniniwala sa pagbabago ngayon lang panahon. Join us! Samahan niyo kami rin sa Makati!
Nilakad nila ang kahabaan ng Makati Avenue at dumiretso sa Manila Peninsula Hotel. Pumasok sina Trillanes at muling ipinanawagan ang muling pagbaba sa pwesto ni Arroyo. Nagpadala ng nasa 2,000 sundalo at 5 tangke ang AFP. Pasado 2:00, nagbigay ng ultimatum si Nooy NCRPO Chief Jerry Barrias.
We are clearing the area. We are forcing some people to get out. But we have to meet the timeline of 3 o'clock.
Bandang 5:00 ng hapon, nagpakawala na ng tear gas ang mga otoridad. At maya-maya pa, dito sumuko na si Trillanes matapos ang 6 na oras na pag-ukupa sa Manila Pen. October 11, 2010, pinirmahan ni dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino ang Presidential Proclamation No. 50 na magkakaloob ng amnestiya sa lahat ng nagaklas na sundalo. Sa Oakwood Mutiny noong 2003, sa standoff ng Marines noong 2006, at Manila Pen Siege noong 2007. November 2010, naglabas si Aquino ng Proclamation No. 75 na siyang pumalit sa Proclamation No. 50. Dito, mas pinalawig ang amnestiya, pati sa mga dating PNP personnel na sangkot din sa mga insidente. December 2010, naaprubahan na ng Kongreso ang proklamasyon. January 5, 2011, kasama ang iba pang lider ng Magdalo, pumunta sa Senador Antonio Trillanes IV sa Ad Hoc Amnesty Committee ng Department of National Defense para mag-apply sa alok ng amnestiya ng Administrasyong Aquino.
Kasi hindi naman ho kami nagpanggap na yung ginawa namin napagpunta sa Oakwood and sa Manila Pen and na natural na ginagawa ng sundalo. We are man enough to admit na we have broken rules in the pursuit of our moral cause and we faced it.
Noong buwan din yun, naaprubahan ang amnestiya ng Trillanes at ilang nag-apply para rito. June Veneracion, Nakatutok, 24 Oras.
With a lot more law enforcement agency officials who participated in politics, let's try to look into some of them and review their achievements and maybe some of their failures. Let's start with Alfredo Fred Lim. Based on his profile, he was the former superintendent of the PNPA, a former director of the Eastern Police District in Metro Manila, served as the National Bureau of Investigation Director during the Aquino administration, and became a mayor for 12 years and a senator once. And as to why he was called as Dirty Harry was based on his notorious crime campaigns, such as marking the houses of suspected criminals and closing whorehouses. He was also known for placard justice because every time he closes establishments, not just few establishments, but amounting or total of 300 and above establishments. He always puts placard on them and sprays paint, just like the picture. Before his mayorship, the city of Manila was called as a lawless city. And the Dirty Harry term was based from an American film series in 1971, who is assigned to execute dirty jobs. In the dictionary, Dirty Harry means a police officer who is reckless, disregards practices and policies, and practices vigilantism, or has a questionable use of force involving an officer to shooting incidents. One of his failures, as I recall, is when he was mayor in 2010. He was involved in the Luneta hostage crisis, where 8 Hong Kong nationals were killed in a bus. He was a mayor by that time then. Next would be Panfilo Lacson. He was the PNP chief during Erap's administration, elected senator for 3 terms, and appointed as the Tacloban Rehabilitation Caesar. He was called as a Caesar, or is defined as a government official in charge of a department after the Typhoon Yolanda in 2013, and was in charge of the rehabilitation for the typhoon victims. Unfortunately, he was called out by the survivors to be replaced as the rehabilitation Caesar and persona non grata, prohibiting him to step foot in the area for not hearing the victims' claims. Our next official would be Rodolfo Biazon, who was the former AFP chief and was elected as a senator, also being elected as the representative of the Lone District of Manila. And in the year 2016, he was known for his statement, which was, "Soldiers should only follow legal orders." This was his statement after President Rodrigo Duterte's call for the army to execute warrantless arrest against former Senator Antonio Trillanes. Last but not the least, Bobby Ortega, former Baguio City Police Chief, elected as Baguio City Councilor, and was popularly known as Markang Bungo. He was given an alias because of eliminating crime, bringing down Baguio City's crime rate by 95%, cleaning the city as they call it. He is a member of the Ortega political clan in La Union.
Now I am back to explain to you about the military conflicts that our AFP and PNP had experienced during their time of service. So I'm going to pinpoint the major ones, and I'm just going to give a brief description about this war or this encounter. So first of all, we have the Zamboanga Siege. The Zamboanga Siege was a battle between the Philippine government and the MNLF group. So it started on September 9, 2013, when an MNLF faction began to build flags or to raise flags in the Bangsamoro Republic of Zamboanga City. So overall, the leader of this MNLF group was Ustads Javier Malik and Caid Ajibon. However, they were mainly connected to their main leader, who is Nor Miswari. So here, the results of the battle was that 183 MNLF members were killed, 292 were captured. As for the military or the armed forces of the government, 25 were killed, 184 are wounded. So here, civilians are affected since 12 of them are killed, and wounded civilians have ranged up to 70. So after all, it was a government forces victory, and they were able to repel the plans of the MNLF. Let's proceed in the Marawi Siege. As we all know, the Marawi Siege is a battle between the Philippine government forces or the armed forces of the Philippines and the Maute group that are affiliated by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. So, yes, this war had started on the 23rd day of May and had ended for 5 months. So, probably that was on December, which also had given a big damage in Marawi City. So we know that this war started when this Maute group had entered different buildings, especially the Marawi General Hospital, and they also had entered the Mindanao State University, destroying churches, Christian churches, as well as disrespecting everyone, as well as shooting or killing everyone they see on their sight, the civilians, as I mean. So what catches the most attention from the government, they were able, the Maute group were able to enter the city hall of Marawi, as well as they were also able to raise an ISIL flag in the city hall. So there, the armed forces of the Philippines had started to move in Marawi and do surveillance as well as defending positions. So as the war had continued, soldiers were killed from accidental airstrikes. Isnilon, Hapilon also had been killed, who is the the ISIL Amir of the Southeast Asian region. So there at this time, overall, the result of the war had ended with a government victory, with 978 Maute killed. So unfortunately, there is 168 of the armed forces of the Philippine members had been killed. Some of them are from friendly fire, or as we call that, accidental airstrikes. So yes, this is how the Battle of Marawi had started and have ended. So yes, that's it for this part or explanation of the Marawi Siege. Now, another battle between the government forces and the MILF. It's the Battle of Camp Abu Bakar. So this Camp Abu Bakar is a battle which had resulted into deaths and casualties from both sides. So here, it is a war for garnering a defensive or a strategic position, as well as the final phase of the war is the final phase of the Operation Enduring Freedom here in the Philippines, since the armed forces of the Philippines were assisted by the United States Army. So here, in this final phase, this happened in 2000, and unfortunately, there were 12 Filipino soldiers who were killed. But it's good that 136 MILF or Moro Islamic Liberation Front had been killed. So it was a decisive victory of the armed forces of the Philippines, since they have captured Camp Abu Bakar. They had got strategic position during the time, and as well as there were more casualties, and there were also who were captured as well, who were surrendered in the MILF. So this is the end of my discussion here in the encounters, since these are the most common encounters that our armed forces of the Philippines and Philippine National Police had encountered during the 2000s decade. So here, it's very necessary for us to know about whom or who our armed forces are fighting. So yes, this is the end, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you the best, and let's go.